Welcome to r/entitled parents. When he was 14 he was living with his mom and sister on a housing estate. It was summer and he liked a bit of light in his upstairs bedroom, so he left the curtains open at all times. That included when he was getting dressed and after having a shower, so if you purposefully stared at his window you could only see him from his waist up. Well, their neighbor did not like that one bit. She went pounding on their door, yelling at my mill that her son was a disgrace, hanging around always naked and exposing himself to her daughter, same age as him. My mill told her he had every right to do whatever he wanted in his bedroom and that if they didn't want to see him all they needed to do was not to look. A couple of days went by and lo and behold, the police showed up at their door. Turned out the neighbor had been filming and taking pictures of my boyfriend to show to the housing people as evidence of his wrongdoing to get them kicked out. Except that the housing office called the police on her for taking pictures and videos of an underage kid and kicked her and her family out. In the next story, Op gets pushed away in his wheelchair. A few years ago I was living in Vegas and an AM literally wheeled me away from my family. I have a number of health issues and after a few botched surgeries and neurological damage I was bedridden. I never left my house/bed except for doctor appointments. I hadn't been out at all for 2.5 years. I had worked really hard on my daily physical therapy and my balance had greatly improved. My family came out for a visit, my husband was stationed at Nellis AFB, and I was so excited to surprise them with my improvements. I could stand and walk and was actually wearing pants. To celebrate I wanted to go see the fountains at the Bellagio. For most people this is a nice outing but for me this was years in the making. I was nervous I might get overtired and lost in the fast-moving crowd so we had to bring my wheelchair. We knew the schedule for the fountains and arrived super early to secure a spot in front where I could see from my chair. It was such an important moment for all of us. We lined up by the fence and no sooner did the show start I felt this jerking on my wheelchair. I thought maybe someone had tripped on me and I immediately looked up to apologize. I was pretty self-conscious and ashamed of being out in a wheelchair in such a big crowd. When I glanced up to apologize I see this woman with a small child on her hip using one hand to literally pull me away from the fence. Because she was only using one hand she spun me completely around to face the street. I was stunned. I could hear everyone reacting to the fountain show and here I was looking dumb awkwardly facing a bunch of strangers. I yelled for my husband but he couldn't hear me over the noise. I looked behind me and this woman had plopped her child up onto the guardrail. Never made eye contact with me, never said one word to me, and had treated me like a piece of luggage. I tried to stand up but the people around me had crowded me so much I didn't have room to push my chair back enough. I desperately looked around at the strangers in front of me hoping someone who had seen what happened would help. It then dawned on me that this was a huge family/friend group. They all began nudging me aside, further and further away from my family. It all happened so fast. I found myself pushed into the walking area where people who weren't stopping to watch the fountain show were quickly trying to walk past. People couldn't see me through the crowd and were stumbling over/past me. I couldn't see my family anymore and was trying hard to push myself up out of my chair the way my physical therapist had taught me. I feel someone grabbing my chair again and I panicked. I start yelling no, please. No, and then realized it was my husband. He had glanced to check on me and to take a picture of me being out for the first time and I was gone. He had to fight his way through the crowd, the same family group, to find me. I burst into tears. I don't know why, but it was like all the trauma from the last few years hit me all at once. I told him they had pushed me away. And after putting it together, my husband was pissed. He turned to this group of people and demanded to know who had pushed me away. By this time the fountain show was pretty much over. The group initially just ignored my husband like they had me, until I pointed out the woman with her child as the culprits. My family confronted her, nicely I might add, and tried to explain why a wheelchair is an extension of a person, etc. She at first pretended like she didn't speak English. But I had heard them talking amongst themselves in English while they pushed me into the walking area and I told my husband as much. She then gave up that act and told my family about how I was in their way and probably couldn't see anyway, and the man with her claimed, in a raised voice, that in their country they don't take their shameful family members out in public. To which my husband responded, if that were true, none of you would be here. I was maybe even more shocked by his last sentence than being wheeled away. I managed the courage to tell him that what he said was bullshit and that I'm sure people in your country are actually kind and would be proud if I was their daughter. I remember the exact words I said because later I was very proud that I stood up to them. The group sort of collectively scoffed, spoke to one another quickly in what I think was Hindi, and slowly walked away as if nothing happened. We didn't stay for the next show because I just wanted to go home. I don't know which is worse, pushing a disabled person in a wheelchair out of your way or wrongly painting your countrymen as prejudice. My niece had to move back in with her mother after the lockdown started. She lost her job and all her classes were online. Her lease was month to month, so she didn't have to worry about breaking her lease. Recently, the schools have reopened and she has started attending classes again. Problem is, her apartment, which was walking distant from her university, is now rented. Parking in the area sucks and it's an hour one way from her mother's house on public transit. I will say now that my niece is also incredibly spoiled and is taking classes for a degree with no practical benefits. By this I means that it will in no way help her with a career path, nor are they necessary courses for further education. Got a call from my sister asking if my niece could live with me because I live alone in a 2-bedroom house and I'm a 15-minute bus trip away from her uni. I said no for several reasons. I work nights and need to sleep during the day. My niece is a very loud young woman and doesn't understand the concept of an indoor voice. Last time she stayed in the same home as me, I was sleep deprived because of her practically yelling on her phone, and it affected how I did my job, resulting in a write-up. My niece is also a very messy person. I helped with a move out and the memory makes me shudder. Some of the unwashed dishes in the sink were tossed because they were beyond cleaning. She tried to just sit on random crap and text her friends and scroll TikTok. I had to take her phone and lock it in the glove box for the U-Haul we rented to get her ass moving to help. My sister still calls me a bitch for doing this. While I may have a 2-bedroom home, the second room is my office/work room. I've been in the process of making wire-wrapped necklaces to sell online for extra income and I need the area as a workspace. It's also my library, for lack of a better word. I keep my collection on novels on bookshelves in there and a comfy old recliner for reading in. My niece is allergic to cats and I have 3. My sister seems to think I can keep them all either in my bedroom or locked up in the basement for the school year. FCK that right there. And this is the big one. My old sister is under the belief that my niece wouldn't have to help out with household expenses or be expected to cook for herself. She also thinks that my niece shouldn't have to get a job while in school to focus on her studies. Tried to pull the "we're family and should help each other out" card. But that didn't count for shit when my step-siblings nearly made me homeless after my stepdad died and gave me 30 days to find a new place for me and my dog. Dog-friendly buildings where I live are hard to find. The only way I would agree for my niece to live with me is that she would give me $250 a month to help cover utilities and part of the internet. Figured that is a steal considering a cheap place around her school is more than double, even triple that, plus utilities, and she could use the garage for her car for free. But I would also expect her to buy her own food and clean up after herself, like doing her own laundry, keeping her room clean and putting her dishes at least in the sink, if not the dishwasher. Would not expect her to cut the grass or shovel snow. The thought of even asking her to do this already gives me a headache. Now I'm getting texts from my both sisters telling me that I'm a horrible person and should open my home to this. That it's unreasonable to expect a 19-year-old to spend 2 hours on the bus every day and yada yada. Part of me feels guilty, because I could move my office and workspace down into the basement. Can't be a living space due to lack of windows, but I can't afford the expense of a second person in my home without them chipping in for the bills. Nor will I lock my cats away in their home.